last year, I read an article about our next speaker, Ryan Hanlon with Route 3 Films. And it's kind of a local boy, moves away, comes back, does well. But I was really taken aback with, or impressed with his willingness to give back to the community and what he's doing in the community now. So I'll let Ryan explain everything, but a warm welcome for Ryan, please.
Heck of a time to have technical difficulties here.
You need a 13-year-old.
I know, right? Let's see if we get this to come back to life here.
Yeah.
It was working perfectly when I got here.
Now we know,
Now we know it.
password.
My kids know it too, so that's all right.
Is the same on your debit card?
I have to keep it.
Ron is a banker.
That would be my daughter. She would be the one that's curious about that. So, sorry about that, guys. So yeah, Ryan Hanlon, Route 3 Films. I have a crazy story. I will try and keep it brief and show you guys some really cool films today. So, you know, I grew up not far from here up on Milton Hill. So, you know, throughout my life, I don't fancy myself an Alton guy, a Godfrey guy. I'm an East Alton guy. I always have been. My dad worked for 40 years at Olin, and my mom worked for 20 years down at the board office for the Alton School District. And I was youngest of 4 kids, and I like to say that I was probably the least successful out of the 4. And I really, to be honest, if I'm being honest, I think there was an expectation that I wasn't going to be very successful. I was the youngest. I had poor grades. I was an average to below average athlete. But I knew how to have a good time, and I knew how to work really hard. And I'll always, and I remember this more these days now, but my mom always said, Ryan, if nothing else, as long as you work really hard and you persevere, and you have some sort of ability to speak to people, things are going to work out. So I go off to high school. I went to Marquette Catholic, and of course everyone else was focused on a lot of things like excelling athletics and excelling in the classroom, and I was concerned with fixing up a 65 Chevelle with my dad. I was very much a car guy growing up, so I was distracted a lot in high school, and I got, you know, again, average grades. And I remember I decided to get involved in the plays, and what was exciting for me when I was in high school is that I was the kid that drove a 65 Chevelle, but played football, but was in the plays. So I kind of broke the mold of that school because there was a lot of stereotypes about that school, and I didn't fit into a lot of cliques, and I kind of liked that. And I remember I would miss a lot of these Corey League games in the summer, and people would be like, where were you at last weekend? Why didn't you come to the Corey League game? And I was like, well, I was in Cordova, Illinois at the drag strip with my dad. I just had a different childhood, what I call a very mechanical childhood in that. So I get to my senior year in high school, and I had a great humanities teacher, Mrs. Ruth Klaus, and she was also our drama teacher with the plays. And we have to do this huge humanities project. And you have to think about this. This is the tail end of my senior year, so everyone's talking about going to their state schools or going to private schools or what they're going to do. And I had no plan. I had zero plan. So I walk up to Mrs. Klaus and I say, Mrs. Klaus, can I make a film instead of write this paper or make this diorama or whatever? And she looked me square in the eye and she said, Mr. Hanlon, you can do it, but you better take it seriously. So my thought was that no one was going to take me seriously because I want to put together something they're not used to. So I grew up, you know, in the 80s, but I was a child of the 60s because of my dad and drag racing and nostalgia. You know, we were pulling cars out of fields when other kids were listening to Poison and doing that kind of thing. So I thought, I'd read a bunch of books about Vietnam, and I thought, you know what, I want to tell a story about Vietnam. And I don't think anyone in that classroom is going to be ready for it. And it was basically myself and one of my best friends, and it was the story of a kid that goes off to school and a kid that goes off to Vietnam and how their lives changed. And I'll never forget, you know, going into the classroom and everyone's kind of giggling. They think it's probably going to be a Saturday Night Live skit or something like that. We shut the lights off and we play the video. And I mean, the reaction I got from everybody in that classroom, especially Mrs. Klaus, was just like this slow, like unexpected applause. And something kind of happened in that moment. I thought, well, maybe there's something to this. But you got to think, this is pre-internet. This is, you don't just walk out of college and pick up a camera and get a job making wedding films or something like that. So So I go off to Lewis and Clark, try and figure my life out a little bit. Another great teacher, Jim Price. Neat guy, awesome guy, love this guy. And I said, hey, Mr. Price, I'd like to try and do something I did in high school. I'd like to skip this project and make a film. And he said, okay, but take it seriously and do a good job. And that film was a better version of the other one, and it was even better. And it was black and white, and we really cranked up the creativity. But you got to remember, this is like 1996, so I'm in my basement with 2 VCRs, editing this thing. My dad's like, what are you doing? What's going on around here, you know? So my parents were saying, what are you going to do with your life? You know, are you going to stay at Lewis and Clark and do something different? Are you going to transfer? We started looking around at schools, and we found Webster University over in St. Louis, a really cool, interesting school. I guess for interesting people like me that don't know what to do with their lives. And Webster says, your grades are terrible. Do you have any examples of your work? And I was like, examples of my work? I'm not like, you know, this artist. And I said, I have these 2 VHS tapes. And they said, well, mail them to us. So I mailed these VHS tapes to them. Weeks passed, and I get a letter that says, you've been accepted at Webster University on a probationary basis. You're in. For the next 3 years of my life, I was getting straight A's, I was making films, I was learning how to use camera equipment and audio equipment, I acted a whole bunch. It was like the sun came out. And I finally felt like I was that person that could get good grades and could be something. It was a really special time. But then, you know, you get out of college, and this is 1999, again, no internet, no multiple agencies to work for. I couldn't find a job. So I end up getting approached by my big brother. My older brother's an attorney, and he says, hey, congratulations, we're going on a trip together. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we're going to Ireland. And I thought, you have to understand, I hadn't really even been on a plane, I hadn't been nowhere. And my brother says, we're going to go to Ireland. So we go on this 8-day trip to Ireland, and I'll never forget, we're sitting in this pub in Galway, we're having a beer, and my brother is not the adventurous type. He's not the type of person to give this profound advice, or he's very dry and funny. He said to me, he's like, you know what you should do? He's like, you should take 90 days and do something interesting with your life before you're like me and you can't take 3 months or so on and so forth. And it was this really interesting point in my life where I was like, yeah, that's some really great advice that I should probably consider taking. So I move home, I sell my car, I tell my parents I'm moving back to Ireland for 6 months. And they thought I was completely crazy at this point. And my childhood friend, Ben, was kind of striking out in life too. He just wrecked his car, he had some trouble with drugs, and I said, why don't you come with me? Why don't we go do this together for 6 months? Maybe we'll get some work, maybe we'll have a good story to tell an employer, maybe I can do a little bit of acting or something like that. Let's go do it. And his parents were just shaking their heads. So we disappeared to Ireland for 6 months, and we ended up getting good jobs, we pay taxes. He ends up meeting the love of his life in Ireland. We move home. He goes back to school. He gets a job at Pebble Beach and then Spyglass. He is now married with 2 kids and living in Orange County. So what I realized was that the trip to Ireland was really for Ben. It was about Ben, and I needed to go start my life. That I really, the dreaming was kind of over for me at that point. So I go and I get a job in the hospitality industry. My dad's like, student loans are kicking in. You need to get your act together. And I got a really good job doing this, doing live events. And for 10 years, I was in the hotel business. 5 of those years were in sunny San Diego, where my son was born, which was a beautiful, beautiful time in my life. Surfing, mountain climbing, wineries, trips to Mexico. Connor is born, and my wife proclaims that the beach party is over with. and then it's time to move back home. And I knew she was right. We wanted to move back to the Midwest, and we wanted to have our kids have a Midwestern life. So we moved home, and fortunately I got a job at the Four Seasons, which was Lumiere Place. And I got to open that hotel. Again, good career move, good pay, working a ton of hours, but I was never home. And when I was in San Diego, I didn't have children, so it didn't matter. You know, we were always on the go. Now my daughter was born, so I had 2 little kids at home. My wife was commuting to Alton every day. She worked for the Alton School District. So things were getting really tough, and I needed to figure out a way to change my life. I couldn't work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day at that hotel every single holiday. And out of the clear blue sky, my mom sends me a Telegraph newspaper clipping about Michael Gebbon, this young man who has a wedding film company in Alton. And I called him up, we got to know each other. I invited him down to the Ozarks to do a little documentary about the Ozark Trail Association, who I'm an active volunteer for. And over that weekend, he said, you really know what you're doing. He's 10 years younger than me. He's like, why don't you run my company for me? And I said, man, I got 2 kids and a mortgage. I bought my house right before the collapse of the real estate. Like, this ain't happening. I'm not a dreamer. You wrong guy. I wear a suit tie every day. Forget it. And he kept needling me. He kept working me. He's like, well, what if this? What if that? And he's like, all right, Ryan, I've got a loan from a bank here locally and a cosigner. We're going to pay your salary for 1 year, but you have to come work for me. So I tell my wife this, and I mean, I had to stand back because her hand was coming really close to my cheek. But I talked her into letting me take this chance. And I really did my homework, and I talked to my family, my older brothers and sisters, and I had a little bit of a safety net planned, and I said, let's do it. So long story short, in less than a year, we had found ourselves in New York City, backstage of Tony Robbins' largest event that he puts on, UPW. And you have to understand, like, the magnitude of something like that for a couple of kids from Alton to find themselves all the way in New York City making a film for Tony Robbins. It's a little hard to believe, to be honest with you. So I'm going to show you one of the films we made for him.
After pretty much all the doctors.
Start this over for you guys.
I went to UPW after pretty much all the doctors had told me that I was never going to use my arm again.
My husband passed away. He died in December.
So I was about 50 pounds overweight.
My business folded within 6 weeks.
I was that person that life happened to instead of you being in charge of your life.
I had a certain fire in my belly when I was younger. The fire's gone, and it's time to get the fire back.
What if I could actually do the things that I feel like I've dreamt of doing my whole life?
There is a humanity that occurs at an event like this that you just can't get by yourself.
I have not had a drink in 5 years. I've lost the weight.
There is help. Tony and UPW.
If you want to make a change in your life, that's what you have to do.
Since going to UPW, I was able to not only get my arm back, but also get my finances back.
There's just an energy that you need to experience.
So grateful for finding that power from within myself. Thank you so much, Tony Robbins.
So how do you go from living off Milton Hill to working with Tony Robbins? I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But it's a great backstory. So I'm working with Michael, and Michael is really excited about people like Tony Robbins and Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk, these guys that are really moving and shaking with the world of, changing your life. And I was like, Tony Robbins, the guy from Shallow Hal? I'm 10 years older than Michael. I'm like, this is crazy. What are you talking about? He's like, no, you're not going to believe this. I got someone from Tony Robbins to email us back. What do we do now? And I said, I got it. We got this. So I get on the phone with this young man named Josh Hunter. I said, Josh, what I want to do is I want to fly my crew and myself to New York City on our own dime. Tony doesn't have to pay for this. We're going to make a film for Tony in the Meadowlands, and we're going to edit it that weekend, and then you're going to show it to your screaming 6,000 fans on Sunday morning. And he was like, who the are you? And I said, I'm a filmmaker, and I've got the work to back it up. And I showed him the work, and then I said, furthermore, I'm going to be in San Diego next week. So I'd like to meet you because I'm aware that your offices are in San Diego. Well, the backstory was that I was just going to San Diego to go to the desert with my old friends and drink beer and drive around on a 4x4. But the timing was right. So what I did is I said, Josh, meet me at the Hyatt Regency La Jolla, which was a beautiful hotel that I worked at for 5 years. So I rented a Jeep, and I pull up in this Jeep, and I get out, and everyone's like, hey, Ryan, what's up? High five. I haven't seen people in a couple years. The GM comes out and gives me a hug, and Josh Hunter is like, who are you? But I planned all of it. I was strategic about how I needed this to work, because I needed him to take us seriously. So we go into the bar, and I said, he tells a story about the beer I ordered, and he respected that or something, because I didn't get a fancy beer. So we go in there, we have a beer, and I said, so what's the deal? And he's like, Tony, everybody wants to go for it. They love how bold the idea is, you know. So lots of legal papers, lots of that kind of stuff. And we go to New York City. I asked for a helicopter. I just kept asking for things, and they would give it to us. And we created a film just like that, where Tony comes to the event, and people are charged up, and it's a really great experience. And we edited for 20 hours straight in a Red Roof Inn in New Jersey. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, we showed this film to Tony backstage. And everybody back there's like, Tony's going to break you down and build you back up. And he's going to tell you how bad your film is and how bad you are and how he can fix your film. And I was like, I'm so tired. I was like, whatever. Like, just so we have pictures and video of all this happening. So Tony puts on the headphones. And the backstory is Tony had told us some films that he'd like. And I had that in mind when I was editing. So he puts his headphones on. He takes the headphones off and he's like, gentlemen, we're going to do business together. And we ended up flying to Fiji with him. We went to Palm Springs with him. We went to San Jose with him. We were supposed to go to India with him. And that was, that was a 6-figure contract for a couple of guys from either end of Broadway. And that really started something. It really made us feel like we were legitimate, creative filmmakers. And we had a very successful year, but what I realized is that there were certain things that I was identifying that were needs and wants in my life, like I don't want to go to India with Tony Robbins. That world is crazy. I want to be a coach, and I want to have kids, and I want to not do what I did in the hotel business. And Michael and I were kind of going like this a little bit. So I approached the Alton School District. My mom always said, do what you know. And I was like, I want to help people here locally. We've got really good work. Schools are underserved. Nonprofits are underserved. I'm going to go approach my friends that I know at the board office and just say, what do you think about this? Is this a good idea? Should schools have films on their websites telling their story? Christy Baumgartner was like, I think it's a great idea. So I made a couple films for the Alton School District and then the Alton Redbirds, which is probably one of our most popular films, this baseball film. And I quickly realized that, you could have a niche business right now with the internet and with what we were doing. And I said, you know what, Michael, I want to work with schools and nonprofits, and that's it. Maybe the occasional small business in the community, but that's it. And I want to buy you out. And he said, I think you should do it. And we high-fived, and I gave him a check, and I decided to start a company called Route 3 Films. And I had the website finished, I had the story, I had everything figured out about Route 3 long before I wrote him that check and bought him out. And basically what I did is I made my focus schools and nonprofits, because in this world, if you think that you can serve one or two avenues, niche marketing, just do that and just excel at it. And what I found is that I started working with Fontbonne University, John Burroughs School. Well, John Burroughs has John Hamm, who's an alum. They have Carrie Kimper, who's an alum. Well, we started kicking around this idea for this fundraising campaign, and Burroughs is like, we're going to fly you to New York City, and you're going to hang out with John Hamm for a day, and you're going to interview him. And then we're going to fly you to LA, and you're going to hang out with Ellie Kemper, and you're going to interview her for a day. And I was like, look at this. I'm just focusing on schools and nonprofits, but I'm hanging out with John Hamm, and I'm hanging out with Ellie Kemper, and I'm still making good films for this audience. So what I realized is that, I have nothing to be ashamed of by sticking to my guns with these markets that I want to serve, because all of these other things came from it. We started doing work with Budweiser. We've done all kinds of things. But the work I enjoy doing is right here within a 2-hour radius of my home, because I want to get home and I want to coach baseball and I want to have a life. So one thing I've really enjoyed about staying connected to Alton is the ability to serve Alton. So when I do a lot of projects around here, a lot of times they become like case studies for me. And going to Marquette Catholic and playing football and loving that school was an example of my need to give back. And plus, there's great stories in schools. So I wanted to make this film explore spirit about what it was like to run onto that field and be part of that school and relive that experience that I had. And the school was into it, and we were trying to figure out how to do it, and there was some issue with money and this and that, and the next thing, and I said, you know what, here's the deal. It's free. I don't need the money. I don't want the money. I want the film to get out there and be seen. I said, but you have to follow my strategy. We're going to release it on Thanksgiving. We're going to promote the Facebook post, and then we're going to release it again in Christmas. And I had a whole strategy of how to actually release the film. And you're talking about a school of a few hundred kids. By Sunday night, we were in the thousands and thousands of views. So I'll show you that film here.
take a moment right now and look around the room at your teammates. Think about all the things you guys have gone through throughout this season. We control our own destiny. Make tonight your defining moment. Let's play the best game of your life tonight.
So the moral of the story is that it's okay to do stuff for free. And especially when you're a filmmaker, it just became a great case study for us. It became a, you know the parents about practice tonight, FYI guys. I just started to realize, I'm like, I can just do stuff for free if I want to do it. And it'll be a great teaching lesson for me. It'll be a great speaking lesson if I speak to students or other people. And it builds my portfolio, and then I can put that film in front of a college, and they're like, how do we get that? Because we're tired of paying an agency 6 figures a year and not getting that. So what I realized is that, hey, let's just pick projects to do for free. Let's do passion projects. It took me as far away as Utah to the Wasatch Mountains to do a project. It brought me back here to raise $50,000 in 50 days for the Haskell Playhouse restoration. It's allowed me to make award-winning films for Lewis and Clark Community College, where I got my start. So I'm going to show you one more film. I got to be cognizant of time here. I want to show you one more film that I made for Lewis and Clark, and then I want to show you a sign that I'm designing right now. It's going to go right where Route 3 turns, and you go down Broadway where Alton and East Alton meet. We can end on that because I want to be aware of y'all's time. I had a fantastic experience at Lewis and Clark, and I think this film kind of sums up what that school's all about.
You walk onto this campus, and it feels as though you're at an Ivy League institution.
It is cultured in so many ways. You would never know that it is a 2-year college.
They can explore classes, meet different kinds of people, and in that time figure out what they want to do next.
There are groups, there are organizations, there's always stuff to do. Anything you want is here.
Try out different stuff to really find where you want to go in life and what you want to do.
It is definitely not like any other community college.
The small class sizes is really beneficial because they can really focus on you and how you learn.
You're getting a lot more one-on-one time with your teachers, your instructors, your advisors.
Here at Lewis and Clark, I'm really finding myself. This place is truly amazing. I love going to school here.
I have gained so much education, and I have gained so many experiences.
I've grown as a person, as a student.
That's what a college does. It establishes how you perceive yourself and how you perceive your future.
If you're looking for a way for your life to change, then Lewis and Clark is the place for you to be.
No matter how far I go, I will never forget where I began.
So we're making films like this, we're experiencing some success, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can I do next? And what can I do next for the community? You know, my parents live up off, Milton Hill on Omega. I'm always up there. Me and my dad have this old race car, which is another story. And I'm driving into Alton, and I see where the old Welcome to Alton sign used to be. I'm like, you know what? I bet I can fix that. And I get a hold of Brett Stawar, Bobby Barnhart at City of Alton, and another gentleman. I get them all lunch. I'm like, here's the deal. I'm going to pay for it, but we're going to put a Welcome to Alton sign in. Tell me what the rules are. Tell me what the parameters are. And for the last many, many weeks I've been working on this project to get this sign in the ground. So our plan is to get this sign in the ground right when you cross Wood River Creek and enter there at Alton and the split for Broadway and Route 3. And you would be really surprised at how easy it was for me to get this sign made, how inexpensive it was to get this sign made, and a little bit of a partnership with the city to get it in the ground. So our plan is to try and get it in the ground before May 4th, which is the big tourism summit that Brett puts on. Fingers crossed. The uprights are being ordered. The idea was to maintain the look of some of the other signage that's around kind of the historic part of town, but I'm not from the historic part of town. I'm from this part of town, and there's no reason why we can't have beautiful signage on my side of town. And that's really why I took this on. And again, this will be a teaching lesson, this will be a case study in the years to come, because I speak to students a lot, that you will be surprised at how much you can get accomplished if you just raise your hand and say, I can help. So this is the sign here, and hopefully, this is what you might get to see at some point, something like that. So we're still trying to work out all the details. But again, my philosophy is work extremely hard, do the best you can with what you have, because you're not always going to be the A student. But then when you have success, do stuff like this. Because this is the kind of stuff that matters, and this is the kind of stuff that my kids are going to get to hear stories about, so that I can hopefully instill in them this idea that service is important. But I did say play hard, right? I didn't just say work hard. So I'm going to share one last little thing for you guys, because I know you guys probably need to go. Let's see if I've got it on here. So when I'm not doing all this other stuff, I'm doing this. Ready for it? Ready for it? Thank you guys, that's all I got.